Hello and welcome to Stories of Resilience, our podcast series to promote an ACE-aware nation in Scotland. Adverse childhood experiences touch us all in one way or another. This series explores the thoughts of those involved with the ACEs movement in Scotland, and we talk to individuals who have stories of resilience to share. I'm Gary Robinson. My guest today is Kevin Denvir. Kevin is a leading light in the ACEs movement on Orkney. He's also organised screenings of the film Resilience on the island, which have been extremely well received. So, Kevin, first of all, tell me a little bit about where did you find out, and when was the first time you found out about the ACEs movement?
I guess I first found out when I worked for a third sector organisation called Relationship Scotland and was employed as a family support or family link worker. And that would be early in the sort of 2012, 2013, when I came across the idea of ACEs from America. But it didn't register strongly with me. I just knew that there were people out there who were carrying hurts from childhood that were making it difficult for them to cope as adults. So that was my kind of awakening into ACEs.
So you found out about what was going on in America. When did you actually have that light bulb moment? Was there something in your world that made you go, oh, because when I heard about ACEs, I had a light bulb moment and I could reflect on a lot of my past and a lot of my history.
Yeah.
Was that a similar pattern to yours?
Absolutely. I was, in that job, I went to a training on domestic abuse. And sitting in that training, the lady spoke about the kind of behaviours that would constitute domestic abuse. And as they spoke, I saw my father and suddenly thought, oh my God, I've got ACEs too. So that was my awakening or my light bulb moment, as you describe it, Gary. Yeah.
And you're in Orkney, so you're in far-flung Scotland. Do you think are there similarities or differences in terms of ACEs on the mainland as there would be to some on an island, for instance? Are there different challenges?
Yeah, I think so.
So what I'm thinking about is things like isolation, and then isolation sometimes leads to drink, drugs in some cases, and so on, because it's a much more isolated part of the world. Does that have an effect, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I see that very, very strongly. I mean, having been brought up in central Scotland, and then I moved to Shetland when I was in my mid-20s. So I've lived 21 years in the Shetland Islands and then now 11 years in Orkney. And I think one of the things that I would say that really stands out is that communities tend to tolerate more because we live in such close proximity. So we tolerate, we won't question or report things, we allow people to live their own lives. And I think that the pressures of isolation, as you've highlighted, and I think the pressures of having to get on, we live in each other's lives so much that you tend not to see things that might challenge your own thinking, that might make you feel uncomfortable, that might make you connect with your own pain. So I think there are probably as many ACEs or more go on in rural Scotland as there are in the central, heavily populated areas.
And you organised the screening of the film Resilience in Orkney, I believe. How did it go down? The initial reaction was one of, oh my God, we have to do something about this. I mean, I had councillors there and MPs there who all were very engaged when they left, saying, we have to do something about this. And I guess my frustration is that initial energy didn't translate into firm action, because when people went away and looked at it and I think felt, one, the enormity of the problem, two, the fact that this is in everyone's lives, I think it caused people to look at it slightly differently. And I had a call not long after that from one of the councillors saying, it's okay, we've spoken to officials in the local authority and they feel that everything's being addressed that can be just now. Which is a way of saying, we can't really do much about this, it's overwhelming. Overwhelming is a word that tends to get used a lot when I'm speaking to people about ACEs. So what's the next move then, Kevin? I mean, I'm sure that you're a man that doesn't take no for an answer.
No, absolutely not. What I did was try and influence the people that I know
And I have a kind of constant, I'm always looking for opportunities to speak to either councillors or officials or anyone in the community that's willing to give me time, actually. And I've created a little ACES hub. We call it in Orkney the ACES Collective, where there's 7 third sector organisations and the head of social work have joined, and we bought the licence for resilience for Orkney. So the idea is that we try and go for grassroots and get as many people having an awareness of this message. And I've shown the film now 5 times or 6 times. And we now have a group of people that have just that more awareness. And I would say beginning to get to the point where they're sensitive to what that might mean in terms of behaviour that we see out in our communities. And my goal is to get a place where enough people know about that we grow a community that's based more on compassion than judgment, that we're able to look and say, oh my goodness, I wonder what's happened to that person, as opposed to look at them, how dare they behave like that?
It's really interesting because the mantra, or one of the mantras for the conference, as we know in September, is this aim to make Scotland an ACE-aware nation. And the fact that we have 5 million souls on this island, in this country rather, forgive me, there is a thought process that it might be easier to do it with 5 million people than it is with, say, 55 million people. Although I know that England are looking at it and Wales and Northern Ireland, from what I believe. With the population of Orkney, forgive me, I don't know what the population of Orkney is, but do you think that if you keep banging the drum hard enough and long enough that it will get to a certain percentage of the population?
Well, that's my hope. And in the same way that you've just described for Scotland, I had thought surely an isolated community like Orkney is better placed. And I do feel it is. But one of the lines from the film that always gets me is people's investment in the denial is really, really strong. And there are lots of people that just say, not me, don't look. And I also trained as a counsellor. So I went into therapy as somebody who thought I could help other people, actually, which was also part of my awakening to the fact that actually I'm not unscathed either. And I think our country's full of people in pain, trying to support people in pain. We've got lots of hurt people trying to help people who are hurt. And that makes it hard for us to see and to shift. So there needs to be a bigger movement towards healing across our whole community and helping people to look at their own stories and their own lived experience and say, actually, I could probably go and do some work that would help me to feel better and cope better, to heal. But there's a massive stigma against mental health issues, against saying that there's something wrong with my head. In Scotland, that's really powerful, I think. People, they're no right in the head, that kind of saying. And I think there's a massive stigma towards going and getting help. Instead of saying, actually, do you know what? I take my car for a service every year. I take my computer for a service. We get health checks, but whoever goes to get their head checked?
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's a cultural thing?
Very, very much so. I think it's ingrained in culture, and it's ingrained very strongly in certain even regional areas within Scotland, certainly West Coast and Glasgow, where I came from. In my family, it's such a big thing that you always underplay and you joke and you bring humour to pain because it makes it easier to handle, instead of actually confronting the pain and saying, my God, that was really, really tough. We belittle, we minimise, we move away from, instead of trying to connect with it, which is, for me, the journey to resilience. That's how we get people resilient. We get them to embrace their vulnerability, to embrace their pain, and to process it, to let it run through.
And finally, Kevin, from a personal point of view, since discovering ACEs and adopting ACEs, and you're doing a wonderful job up in the north of Scotland, without a shadow of a doubt. Being ACE aware, how has that strengthened your resilience personally?
Well, that's a big question. I guess I see it as a journey. My resilience gets greater in a sense the more I understand, and it's that it's that sense of when people know better, they tend to do better. And I'm not clear. There are still things that I find really difficult. It's very hard for people to see this. And you can't all of a sudden give people information and expect them to be able to embrace it all, because it has to run through the processing of people's own pasts. And I found that for me, that I've incrementally become more aware, had a greater consciousness of what's happening in the moment in interactions with other people. And I think we have to be aware that it is a process, especially where emotionally people have shut down parts of them because of hurts, that we can't expect to give them a bit of information and that they can suddenly become resilient. It's a process that happens over time, over repeated experiences of helpful, understanding, nurturing engagement. And once you've had a chance to process some of the things that keep us blinkered and blocked from really understanding ACEs and what that means, then it's going to take time, yeah.
Well, Kevin, can I wish you all the best with you and the ACEs movement in Orkney and beyond, and thank you for all your support. I know that it can be more difficult to get from the islands to the mainland, but I know that the conference is on the way, and it's certainly an event that you want to go to. I hope we get the opportunity to meet. But in the meantime, Kevin Denvir in Orkney, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Much obliged. Much appreciated. Bye.
That was Stories of Resilience, celebrating individuals and organisations who are helping to make Scotland an ACE-aware nation. Find out more about ACEs and the ACE Aware Conference this September in Glasgow at www.aceawarescotland.com.